it will be the single largest tax increase in American history.
The tariffs are the single largest tax
Democrats.
Stock market is worse. Egg prices were highest on Easter of any Easter we've ever had. They were looking at Medicaid. They were looking at SNAP. They were looking at the poorest among us to figure out how they were going to pay for the tax cuts for the rich.
Let's hop into a CNN panel featuring MAGA Congressman Mike Lawler and Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz in a pretty heated debate on Trump and economics. So if you haven't already, take a moment, leave us a like on the video, subscribe if you can. It helps us out a ton, gets our channel and the video out there, and we'll be back with the context needed.
The reconciliation bill, where markup started today, is really going to be the tax bill and obviously savings. But also, for members like me, I've been very clear. We're going to protect Medicaid for those who rely on these critical services. All eligible recipients will be protected. But we're going to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse, including the billions of dollars being spent on illegal immigrants getting Medicaid benefits in this country, including in states like New York.
Well, and you've said you would not vote for any final package that included cuts to Medicaid. I think
for eligible recipients.
For eligible recipients. Some people may ask how you define that. We've talked about this.
Well, illegal immigrants should not be getting benefits.
Some people have said work requirements and whatnot. Democrats have argued that there is no way that they can get this done without making those cuts, and that they're going to be big cuts, especially when you look at what was passed in just the outline.
MAGA can no longer lie to those of us that have read the budget outline like they did so long on the campaign trail. Not only do we know for a fact it is impossible for them to pass no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, which, by the way, was a main campaign promise that Republicans didn't even try to accomplish. Just a total lie. They had the majority to do it. Didn't try it. They instead want to do the corporate tax cuts and all of that. But to even afford those tax cuts, they absolutely have to cut Medicaid. $880 billion over 10 years, $88 billion a year. Only $50 billion comes from the committee they're cutting that doesn't go to Medicaid. So at least $33 billion a year has to be cut, as well as food stamps and them closing Social Security offices, laying off staff. Social programs are under fire like never before in America. Also, Medicaid isn't federally available to undocumented immigrants. Some states cover them through Medicaid's emergency program, which is less than 1% of its total expenditures, because their emergency health expenses are more costly than preventative. So if not prevented, those would just fall on taxpayers and be much more costly.
They were looking at Medicaid, they were looking at SNAP, they were looking at the poorest among us to figure out how they were going to pay for the tax cuts for the rich. But look, we're in the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and he told everybody that the economy was terrible under Joe Biden. It wasn't, but that's what he told people. And if that is true in his world, the economy in every metric is worse in the first 100 days than it was before he got elected. The stock market is worse. Egg prices were highest on Easter of any Easter we've ever had. Okay, every metric he used in the election, okay, is worse now than it was before he became president. And so, you know, look, it's not been a great 100 days. This is the only big thing they're going to pass, which is going to do reconciliation, and then we're going to immediately pivot to re-election. Okay, so let's see where they land. I take Governor Lawler at his word that he's not going to vote for Medicaid cuts.
Respectfully, look, the bottom line here is if we do not pass a tax bill, it will be the single largest tax increase in American history.
The tariffs are the single largest tax increase.
And Democrats are...
It's actually the Democrats' fault if we fail. Isn't the own that he thinks it is when anyone with any bit of common sense can see this is entirely on Republicans? Trump decided on his own accord to make the corporate tax cuts permanent, but the working class tax cuts temporary. He did this on purpose. The only reason that this tax increase is even possible is because of Donald Trump. Second, Moskowitz is right. The insanely stupid tariffs Trump placed are the largest tax increase on the American people, again, completely owned by Trump and Republicans. It seems Republicans have quickly become the party that wants to raise your taxes. They only want to cut them for billionaires. Lastly, I love the point that Jarrett made here. Trump claimed the Biden economy was terrible, that it was destroying America, that we were basically a third world country, and by every single metric, Trump's economy is worse 100 days in. And not just worse, but he took the economy from objectively improving to now objectively declining. So by Trump's own argument, his economy is the worst of all time, and it's directly his fault as he changed the trend. And this will never change. MAGA will instead just blame Biden for 4 years, pretending, well, it was so bad, there was nothing Trump could do, even though on the campaign trail, they all told us Trump would solve this immediately.
If President President Trump came with the no tax on overtime, the no tax on tips, rather than
policies that Vice President Harris also supported.
That's correct. If he came with that, then we'd have something to talk about because that money would go down.
But here's the bigger
and he
issue
promised he was going to do that.
I want to make this one point because this is critical. Over the next 10 years, we're projected to spend $86 trillion. We're running $2 trillion deficits. That exploded under Joe Biden's first 2 years, where he increased spending by $5 trillion. That's what gave us the record inflation. So when you say that everything was ho-hum under Joe Biden and it was going well,
I didn't say it.
It's even funnier when you realize that under Harris, we would have gotten all of these working class tax breaks. And if Trump wanted to cut taxes for the middle class, which is what he claims, then why not just bring that as a bill? Why not bring a bill to keep the standard deduction, increase the child tax credit, expand the earned income tax credit, and do no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security? Literally, every Democrat would sign on to that bill. You could fit it in the budget resolution you've passed. Why are you so dead set on the things he's trying to pass, which include expanding the estate tax exemption, raising the AMT further, lowering corporate taxes to an insane amount, and giving the wealthy even more massive tax cuts? All of which, by the way, disproportionately or only benefit the wealthy. So why, if this is for the middle class and you want more money in the hands of working Americans, why are we forcing through these things? And why are we not just passing it like this, which every Democrat would sign on to? But now MAGA is, of course, just instead going to be like, but what about the scraps? What about these little bits and pieces that we have included? Don't you want those for the middle class? And if you vote against it, you don't care. It's such a really stupid, it's so easy to see past, and they're really just hoping that people can't critically think. Trump also, okay, we also have to talk about the spending because I really hate getting this point from MAGA. So just quickly, Trump added more to the debt and deficit than any one-term president in history. He added more debt by far than Biden, almost double. He approved more 10-year debt than Biden did. And actually, a lot of the debt incurred under Biden was actually signed into law by Trump, funny enough. But MAGA doesn't care enough for context and nuance, so they'll also try to blame that on Biden. But in comparison of their two plans on the campaign trail, Kamala Harris was found to have the remarkably less expensive plan, especially over the next 10 years, with Trump's being almost twice as costly. So if massive spending is the issue, why would you ever support Trump?